Good morning. This is Kim De Silva from Language of Relationships, and welcome to the Spanglish World Networks on Singo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Singo TV app from the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Singo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire Sticks, Roku, and Roku Sticks, also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Good morning again, and today I have a lovely guest, Chuck, with me to talk about intercultural relationships. Now, a few weeks ago, we chatted. Oh my gosh, Chuck! I say things like a few weeks ago or a few days ago, and when I really check it back, it's like 2 years ago. But no, it's not. It's not quite that extreme.
Time
A while
flies.
It does. It's ridiculous. A while ago, I had another guest. Her name was Susie, and she was talking about her experiences. She herself she's from Mexico, and
Mhm.
her husband is actually from Russia. And they met at a party in Cancun and got married, settled down in Toronto. So, we were discussing, all of the ups and downs and the crazy adventure they had meeting, getting to know each other, getting to know each other's families,
Oh, sure.
how very different that is. Um, and I'm really happy to have you here today to talk, give your side. I mean, Susie gave her perspective as, you know, a wife, and
Mhm.
Chuck, and not just that, but Chuck is going to give us more of the husband's perspective now. But Chuck, you also come from an intercultural family.
I do. So my father was in the military for 30 years, and I was born in Japan.
Right.
My mother's Japanese and my father is Irish. And so I can tell you that I'm old. And so it's being born in the 1960s, it was a very different time. His cultural variances
Right.
had more of a stigma than they do today, where the world has become much more of a melting pot. And
Yes.
so I grew up with a really strong example of what love can do, what honoring each other's cultures can be like. Because we moved from Japan to the United States when I was 3. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful to come to the United States. And then we'd go back in the summertime every couple years and visit my grandparents in
Right.
Japan. And so, what was wonderful about that, Kim, is that it gave us this opportunity to connect with culture, with family, with the environment, and to be able to be in a space where it was like, wow, this is a whole different way of living. Um,
Right.
but there were some challenges. There were
Right.
some challenges, as you might imagine. So, when I say
Yes.
I, Irish, my dad's redhead, blue eyed Irishman. My mother is 4'11" and a half. She emphasizes the half,
Yes, of
um,
course, of course, of course.
and weighs about 85 pounds. And so when you start to see the variances of culture,
Yeah.
and it got to the point where when my father was traveling 60 miles a day to see my mom
Right.
on a scooter, and then he bought a car. It was quite amazing because the kids would see him and then try to rub the freckles off him. They thought he was dirty.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, they're like, we've never seen anyone that looks like this before. And I give my Japanese grandparents a lot of credit, because in those days, they were arranged marriages.
Right.
So my mother's two older sisters were betrothed in arranged marriages. They allowed my mother and father to marry out of love. They're like, this guy's so crazy. He's head over heels for our daughter. He's
Yeah.
traveling all over Timbuktu to come see her. And so it's like, wow, this changes things. This
Yeah.
this changes the metric. So it was really endearing to
Right.
see how love could actually conquer a lot of things. And so fast forward to 30, oh, it'll be in January, it'll be 37 years my wife and I have been together.
Right.
And
Congratulations. That is no small feat in today's world.
no, it's we're kind of in the minority. And as I say, I married up big time, and she puts up with me because I'm extra, I guess, on some levels. And Julie Julieta Margarita Arguello Hogan is from Nicaragua, from Managua, Nicaragua, and we met in Southern California, where we were both residing um, in our formidable years, our late teens, early 20s, at a nightclub dancing,
See,
of
this
all
is where
things.
this is where a lot of intercultural couples seem to meet, dancing out.
It's the universal language,
I
and it
yes.
really is, and it breaks down all barriers. So that's a whole nother story. But I'm an old break dancer. I'm like grew up with some friends that were very famous in the dancing movies
Right.
in the early years. So like Breaking and Breaking Two, Electric Boogaloo, and the Shaka Khan videos, and Madonna's World Tour. A friend of mine actually choreographed, was the star in all those movies, and we used to go clubbing together.
Oh wow. Yes.
So when we met, it was really amazing because what I started realizing more and more, Kim, is that love and connection in relationships has more to do with energy
Yes.
than it does to do with just physical touch or even language.
Right.
And this became so important to understand because when you start to look at this, we'll go, oh, well, how many languages do you speak? And I said, well, I barely speak English. So I'm fortunate that I've got some prowess in that area.
You're right.
And,
Exactly.
and Julie is bilingual, Spanish and English.
Mhm.
And yet I say all human beings speak the language of love. We all speak the language of communication, adoration, and respect. When
Correct.
we choose to be in that loving state, when we choose to be in that present state, and we don't just make it all about ourselves. We enter into what I'll call the language of we and not the language of me.
That's
Um,
beautiful. Yes.
and there's a lot of people who are addicted to me language. They're addicted to, well, you don't do this for me. I don't get this. I give this. I gave you everything. And then the other person go, well, no, I gave you everything. I gave you the best years of my life. And then after 5 to 10 years, they call it quits. And it's like, why? Because they both started realizing they gave each other everything but what they needed.
That's it.
They, they were giving the other person what they thought they wanted.
Correct.
And this is where, when you're stuck in me,
Mhm.
you only see the world from one lens, and that's your lens.
Correct. Correct. I think that is probably one of the advantages that intercultural couples have. We kind of have to think about the world from another perspective, from
Mm.
the beginning. Now, what you said,
Hmm.
you can still get caught up in the language of me, even in that situation.
Oh,
Uh,
sure. And there's kind of a buffering point that becomes really important for people to understand, and that is when you're exercising self-care.
right.
So like eating, working out, taking care of yourself, having your nails done, getting your hair done, exercising some self-respect and self-dignity. And I said, that's not selfish.
No.
That's significant. It's you need those things in order to feel valuable. And you're not just doing it for you, for me, you're doing it for we.
Yeah.
There's a desire for women to be attractive for their spouse, for their community. They're standing inside a space. And I go, okay, none of these things are wrong. None of these things are uh, challenging. The
Mhm.
bigger part about this is that it comes down more to the fact that people are present
Right.
and that they are feeling full. And I go, oh, isn't that interesting? So, what if language was simply a feeling? What if love was simply a feeling, an emotion, and not just always a state of being?
Right.
Because there are some days you wake up, and you go, I'm not feeling very loving.
No.
You're like, in fact, frankly, you, I don't need to see you right now.
No. I have literally said to my husband before, I love you, but I don't like you right now.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. So now for you, Kim, what is your background?
So I am from Trinidad, which is in the Southern Caribbean. My
Yes.
husband is also from here. Trinidad, however, is a little bit different from some of the other Caribbean islands. It's very intercultural. There's a
Hmm.
lot of ethnic and um, racial mixing. So
Hmm.
we've kind of gotten to a point where we do have a unified culture in that we're all different. We're all
Yes.
sorts of different mixtures. My own, it's for example, none of my four grandparents are pure anything. They're all mixed. So by the time you get to me, it's like, what are you? Like, well, I don't really know, but I can tell you.
Trust me,
Exactly.
if I had a penny for every time someone said, "What are you?"
Right?
and I'm like going, "Human?" I'll go
There
with
is
that. I mean,
there is that
and,
exactly.
and sometimes I'll go American, and they're like going, "No," because like half the time they're like, "Hola, cómo estás?" It's like,
Oh
"No
gosh.
habla." Oh yeah, no. And then I'll have some people like from Hawaii. They go, "Yeah, bro, you speak pidgin." I was like, "No, no slipper." It's like going. So it's crazy because everyone. And then we were in Italy a month ago, and they're like, "Oh, buongiorno," and you're like, "Good morning." Like, "Oh no, no,
Exactly.
no, no, no Italian." I said, "No, English." They go, "No." So, but they understand Spanish, and it's like going. I'm like, "Honey, please take over, because
Yes, yes. That
or
I was
I'm going to
I
order the wrong pasta." And so isn't it interesting? But to your point, so in Nicaragua, it's the same way. So
uh,
Julie is more Castilian Spanish background,
right,
European. So we can
right,
trace her roots all the way back to Spain.
right,
And but when you go to the Caribbean side, they're more Africana in descent due to the
right,
slave trade. And
right.
then when you're more in central Nicaragua, it's more indigenous, which is like the native Indians.
Right.
And so it's like there's a whole blend going on here that,
Exactly.
right. And I go, what a great microcosm of culture.
It is. It is. It really, really is. I think it's beautiful. And as you said, you go to different places and people constantly try to put you in a little box. We lived in London for several years and it was amazing. I had people from Bengal ask if I was from there, people from India ask if I was from there. When my husband would say, well, no, he's Portuguese. They're like, oh, well, you must be from Goa because that's where the Portuguese came to India. Pakistanis tried to claim me, and I was like, no, no. I come from the Caribbean and I am from a long line of very mixed people. So,
Well, and then it's interesting. I have friends that are Indian descent that live in London,
right.
that but they consider themselves English.
They do. They do. Because, and this is where I always talk about culture is more than just what you look like. Culture
Mm.
is what you experience on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
And for me, for example, there are things from, I would say of all the influences in my life, probably the Indian and the Chinese are most evident in, maybe certain I don't want to say rituals, certain traditions or certain foods that we would eat on a regular basis. Um, but that's such a little piece, and
Yes,
where I am from too, we have a lot of religious holidays to reflect the multicultural nature of the country. So although we are Catholic, we participate a lot in like Diwali. Diwali is coming up,
hmm,
so that's a Hindu festival. Um, but it has taken on such a cultural significance in our country. It's like, well, it doesn't matter that you're not Hindu. You visit friends who are. You go
sure.
to events that are celebrating the day, and I think too, coming from where I come from, there is that idea of always looking at cultures and how they interact. Um, I remember when we look at places like New York or London and or any of the major international cities, and people say, well, they're a melting pot of cultures. And I would always think, yes, but here's the difference. Like when we say we're a melting pot, the flavors actually mix together, right?
Mm,
So, and that's what happens here. Whereas I remember being in London and going to Brick Lane to have Indian food, going to certain areas. It was like Chinatown. Then you would go to like the Caribbean area, and I was always there was always all of these different areas for the
yeah.
different people, and they called it a melting pot. And in my brain, like, no, you have walls
Well,
separating all the people.
and that's the thing is that that's one of the reasons why segregation is still so polarizing.
Right.
Here in the United States, we're getting ready to have an election,
Oh God.
and it's very interesting as to what passes for authenticity,
Yeah.
for truth. And don't get me wrong, I mean, politicians, their currency is votes, so
Yeah.
that's not lost on me either.
No.
Yet I get troubled by the fact because I go, isn't it such a milestone that for the first time in history we could have an Asian African American woman as president of the United States? Talk about in a simulation of cultures, and where her father was from uh, the Caribbean and her mother was from Asia. And I go, that is a blessing to be able to see that there's these opportunities to connect and to grow. That's where I see the world going.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting when you look at my side of the family because
Right.
it's very, very intercultural. My brother's wife is Mexican Spanish. My sister's husband is Jewish.
Right.
My nephew's husband is Ukrainian Russian. My nephew's girlfriend is from Chile.
Right. But that's
And
so
so,
beautiful. That is so beautiful.
and my son was actually dating someone who was from Egypt, like, Egypt slash Morocco. And I was like, okay, this is really amazing. And
Yeah.
you brought up a great point too, Kim, and that was when you start to look at culture, some of it has to do with how cultures propagate.
Yes.
So, what do I mean by that? If I were to look at the Chinese culture, inarguably the largest population density on the planet, actually, I think it may be second to India at this point. But if you take Indochina in the
Right.
scope of the world, out of 7 billion people, they make up well to almost half of what the world's population density is. So, you look at it, what it's 2 billion in India and 1.7 billion in China. So
Right.
3.7 billion. So we're just, we're not quite at half, but getting there.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, that's a lot. Actually, I take that back. That is halfway with 7 billion people on the planet. So it's really interesting. And they go, well, so what's the difference? I said, most Chinese don't get the opportunity to leave China.
Yeah.
But in India, if you find the means and the way, then you can go someplace else. And so they have. I was in Fiji. They have a higher population than the Fijians do in Fiji because they see business opportunities, right? So all that culture goes with them.
Yeah.
I don't know that the Fijians knew what curry was. They do now, right? And so it's interesting to see that that's everywhere in the world. And so throughout Texas, huge influence of Indian culture, huge,
Hmm.
amazing restaurants, wonderful people, and driven.
Hmm.
So part of that culture comes down to exactly what you were talking about, which is drive,
Yeah.
the desire. And they go,
Exactly.
oh, but they're taking all our scholarships and they're taking all of our, top science and mathematic jobs. And I go, well, isn't that anyone who has a desire to grow? Because my
Yeah.
kid graduating college, biochem major, comp sci minor. My other daughter is an aeronautical engineering major. My youngest, who's graduating, getting ready to graduate high school, wants to go into biomedical engineering. I go, awesome.
Do it. Do it. If you
This is
want, and this is the exactly, this is what I tell my children all the time. It's anything you want if you work hard towards it. I mean, of course, you know, if you're probably not going to even, you might break 6 feet. Maybe basketball may not be in your future, but
But listen, I played I'm five. I'm just about 5'8", and I played basketball all the way through my senior year in high school.
so they
There's a way.
exactly. So,
There's a way
yeah,
when you have the drive. And
when you
this is what I remind people, that we've been actually fed a false narrative, and this happens a lot in relationships as well too, because they'll say, "Oh, well, you could do anything you put your mind to," and I said, "Oh no, because you change your mind. You
right,
don't change your heart. So you can achieve anything that you put your heart to."
correct. If it becomes the thing that you think about, that you focus on, that you put devote so much energy towards, then yes. And this is why when people talk about, falling out of love, it's like you don't fall out of love. And this idea that we just tumble into, that also wasn't accidental. As much as it felt easy, you know, you
Well,
thought
there was
about
an
it.
alignment. There was an alignment. There was energy that was there. And what keeps relationships interesting isn't everything that's the same. It's actually everything that's different. It's having varying opinions, but respecting the other person's opinion.
Even when it's
Um,
really hard to.
there are times, and there's an interesting saying that I love. And the saying is that all the things that you love about someone are all the things that you may eventually come to find aggravating in someone.
The shadow, yes,
Well,
yes.
and there, because yes, it's light and dark energy. So part of it was, and let's think about this for a second. So
Mhm.
they go, "Oh, I love that they're high energy," and then so in your 20s and your 30s, they're like, "Oh, this is great." You get to 40, and they're like, "Going, could you just slow the frick down?" Like, holy smokes. Why does everything have to be a dumpster fire? Why does everything have to be this? Oh, we used to love this energy. I've outgrown it. And that's not true. The difference is that if someone is now feeling insecure and
Mhm.
their focus has changed, especially when children come into the equation,
Mhm.
because there's this thing called pitocin and all estrogen, and then there's testosterone. And so for males, it's about being a provider,
Right.
and for the mother, it's about, I gave birth to these children and they are so important to me. I never knew I could love someone so much. And then your husband's like over there going,
What about, yeah, chop liver over him?
wait, wait, what? They're like, you never knew you could love someone so much. How do you think we got these two? And so when we start to remember that children are born out of the manifestation of the relationship and not just an air of convenience, because I've never seen a relationship get stronger because of children.
No, that's an
There,
interesting point. Yeah, and it's
I've
something
seen,
that, yeah, yeah,
well, there's again, you said it, where focus goes, energy flows. So when
yeah.
someone is living in a space where they don't feel appreciated or
Mm-hmm.
beautiful or
Mm-hmm.
necessary or valued, and that's a big one. People go, "Oh, well, you're just significant," and it's like, shouldn't I be significant to my family?
Correct, 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 correct. And that,
And
yeah,
yeah, and the bigger question is, do you feel significant to yourself? that
correct.
that level of identity. They go, "But Chuck, you said there shouldn't be a me." I said, "No, there's always a me, and it's really simple. There's a very simple formula: me, M-E. All you do is flip the M upside down, and it becomes we. And so it's literally the yin and yang of life. There's
Right.
both sides, because the common denominator in all relationships is you.
Correct, correct. That's what people say. I just go from one dead end relationship to the other. Wow, what is the common denominator there? Now, I'm
It's not
not
a
saying,
mystery.
yeah,
Right, and so, yes, some people go, "Wait, you're saying it's me?" Well,
There are some things we can look at, there's some changes to make, and then some decisions that maybe we need to be evaluating.
So I'll often ask someone then, what confuses you about relationships?
Mhm.
They're like, why? I said, because where focus goes, energy flows. And if you're constantly stuck in confusion, or if you're constantly looking at what you don't want, oh,
Right.
I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't want. And it's like, what? Guess what? Your brain doesn't know what's really perceived. It doesn't deal in negative. So it's going to go ahead and function by looking at facts. So if you say, I don't want a problem, you're going to attract problems.
And you're going to
I
keep seeing
don't.
it everywhere you go because that's what your brain is looking for.
That's it. And they go, well, okay, how do I shift that? And I said, how do you need to feel instead? They go, what do you
Mm.
mean? I'm looking to feel a different way. I said, well, let me ask you a question. Why do you do anything?
Mm.
It's to feel a certain way. In love, connected, happy, joyful. That if the love comes at a cost, that's constant push, constant drive. If the relationship comes at a constant cost of losing your identity, then the return on investment's not there. The cost is too high.
Right,
And
right.
they go, oh, so I should just avoid those kind of people. And I'm like, oh boy. I said, let's make it real simple. If we use the universal rule that where focus goes, energy flows, and we just think of it like a set of blinders, and we go,
Right.
okay, this is called your reticular activating system. Now, this is how the brain works. It's very simple. It's a binary piece of equipment that you were blessed with. It deals in black and white. It doesn't really like gray area.
No.
It doesn't. So it's always looking for what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
So if I put the blinders on and I go, over here is everything I'm trying to avoid. Over here is everything I need in my life in order to feel fulfilled, loved, connected, and happy. And I go, here's what's beautiful. When this is your focus and you're moving towards this, you're going to get more of it. You don't even see all the stuff you've been trying to avoid. You automatically move away from it.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
like, and some people go, I just don't have any drama in my life. And they're like, why? Because I'm constantly over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is what, and it happens in so many pieces of our life. We don't even realize.
Oh, it's crazy. It's
It,
crazy. And it's simple. So here's another universal law, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
Life is really simple, but it's not always easy.
This is it. This is it. This is it. Oh my gosh. I cannot tell you how many times I've said things like that about relationships as well. And, well, I mean, it's life in general. So, yes, it applies to relationships too. You know, the theory is simple.
Mm-hmm.
The talking about it, the what should I do? It's simple,
Yes.
but it's not easy to do. It's not easy to implement. It's not easy to be in that space of constant giving. And now I'm always careful when I talk about the constant giving because we get that idea then of becoming a victim, becoming a martyr. Like that's not what constant giving is about. It's that idea of showing up in your relationship. And instead of
Right.
thinking, what do I need? We're thinking about what does my significant other need? And
Well,
being,
what do we need? Because here's the deal. If I'm just focused on what their needs are,
well, right.
then
So it is that,
right,
yeah, yeah,
right. Because here's the interesting part about that, Kim, and that's a great distinction that you make. So oftentimes when I'll be strategizing with couples, and I had the pleasure of working with some very high-powered, high-level couples
right,
that they've got everything. They've got money, time, freedom, but they don't have the level of love that they aspire for.
right.
And they go, well, we're in this 50-50. And I go, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm like, no, 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 no. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I own my half, they own their half. And I said, mm-mm, nope. And they're like, okay, can you explain? I said, sure. If you're 100% of what your input is 50% of the relationship. How often are you at 100% of you? And they're like, well, I'm pretty good. So you're amazing. So let's call your 50% is your 100%, and you're having kind of a challenging day.
Yeah.
What would that be? And they go, oh, well, maybe a 35% day. I was like, okay, more likely a 40. I said, great, achiever. I got you. Good. That's awesome. Said, so here's the deal. If the optimal level of your relationship is at 100% and you're at 40%, and let's
Yeah.
just say your spouse is also having a slightly challenging day and they're at 40%, you're at 80%. So the struggle, the strife, the discourse will come in the 20% that's missing. So I said, let me offer you a slightly different perspective. That will make this so much easier. Go in 100% and not in a horse trading type of way. You're 100% showing up in your commitment, not giving to get,
Yep.
not trading time for a
Activity.
dollar. Yeah,
Correct. Mm-hmm.
the five love languages, trading any one of those gifts for, remuneration. So you're going in 100% full tilt, and they're going in 100%. And they go, oh, but what about your formula? And I said, it's really simple. Let's say you're having a really bad day and you come in at 70%. And let's just say they're having a 50% day. What? Said, hey, it's really been a rough day. Said, did you know that 70 and that 50% added together is still 120%? So all your needs are being met at the highest level. And you don't even have to be concerned over what's missing. It'll promote and emote more communication at a clear level.
Yeah.
An amazing opportunity to be able to be present and understand and giving and loving.
Yeah.
And most people just have this really burning desire to be heard, listened to,
Correct.
connected with. What a difference that makes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That if we could only really appreciate that. I think one of the I saw it written somewhere that really drove this point home to me that it said divorce is 50-50,
Mm,
marriage is 100-100.
hmm
Well, yes, when you're talking about splitting things, then we can talk about half and half. But when you're talking about building it up, it
And this is where it gets really sketchy.
mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between the identity of husband and wife and then mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are people who are 100 and 100 when it comes to being mother and father,
Right,
and
right,
yet they don't have the time or the understanding to be 100 and 100 for each other.
correct.
And the consequence of that becomes they're spread too thin.
Yeah.
So someone was saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. What should my concentration be? And I said, at some point in time, your kids are borrowed.
Yeah.
They're always yours, but they're borrowed because they're going to go off and start their own lives.
Mhm.
And then it's going to be the two of you. So, what if you prioritize each other now and at 100 and 100? Because the kids are going to get everything else that's left. And they're like, what? I said, they're going to get the off fall of everything that's left. So all the, recitals, all is like, what, you're not going to feed the kids, you're just going to feed each other? Of course not. So it becomes way more sustainable to make
Mm,
sure that everyone's on the same page and cultivating and moving forward together, not apart.
correct. And this is what, I think um, a lot of the women that I work with, they are in that stage of younger children, so the nurture and the attention level for the children is still higher. And the complaint that comes up a lot as well, I'm doing everything for them.
Hmm
Sometimes my spouse doesn't do enough. And then kind of get to that point of, well, what is really the complaint? Are you is it that you want your husband to be doing more for the children? But when you dig down even below that, no, it's, I want to be seen, I want to be cherished, I want to be heard, I want to be supported.
Mm-hmm.
It actually doesn't have anything to do with the children. The problem
Mm-mm.
is emerging within the relationship, but it's showing, it's manifesting within care for the children.
Well, and so here's where the fundamental comes into play. Men have a very difficult time having multiple boxes open. Men are made up of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a family box, there's a wife box, there's a work box, there is a fitness box, there's a financial security box. And all these boxes don't touch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here's the interesting part about the family box. That's a blended box because it's a family when it's you, your spouse, and your children, but it's still one box. So when we're in that box, and this goes for women too, but it's slightly different. Women are like spaghetti. They're everywhere, connected to everything all simultaneously. And so when they say, "Oh, I am 100%," well, that's true, is that they're feeling the connection to the kids, to you, to everything.
Mm-hmm.
For men, the connection is that box.
Yeah.
So when we start to understand this metric, and then there's this really neat example of this where there's a nothing box as well. That's where men go when they're not feeling full. And they'll go to this box, which is like, oh, well, what's in it? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. And it's true. They're not doing anything. They're just kind of existing. But it's their way of kind of draining the emotional battery of not feeling strong enough or good enough. And this goes back to what you were speaking of earlier, Kim, which is why do men become pleasers? Well, they get to a point where like going, I just need to fix this
Yeah.
because that's the box that's open at this time. And they go, and what's the last thing you want? You don't want them fixing anything. You want them to sit down and listen and shh. So that you can share what you're feeling. And they'll come out something like this, honey, I was thinking. And he goes, oh, there you go thinking again. What you really meant to say was, honey, this is what I've been feeling. And I said, oh, well, that's different. Because again, for a guy, language,
Yes.
and so all of a sudden you're like going, how many languages do you speak? Apparently not the right one. I must be a little rusty. And so this becomes part of the narrative around, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know you anymore.
Yeah.
Ooh. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know me? You sleep right next to me. I'm like, I don't know you. It's like being in this house with a stranger. It's like,
Yep.
whoa, that's harsh.
Yep.
But what if it's true? Because we haven't taken the time to concentrate on we.
Correct.
Mm.
Correct.
You know, it's so funny too, because we have all these examples now as to what that looks like. And normally you'll hear about these shows or different things where it's all about getting revenge.
Right.
So if it's
Yes.
like the Kardashians and they go, oh, it's revenge body. And it's like, wait, what? Why do you have a revenge body? Why don't you have a healthy body, a vital body? And then I go, oh, because you're going to get revenge on all those people who talk smack on you and who said you were out of shape and this, that, and the other. It's like, wait, so you need an external motivation to appease the pain of what you thought other people were saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
here's the truth. The only way it could be true is if you believed it.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what? You believed what people were saying.
Yeah.
And that starts to feel a whole different way.
It does. You get to choose which reality you're going to exist in.
And who's showing up, because you're a human being, not a human doing. It's one of the reasons why I ask people how they're feeling. I don't ask them how they're doing.
Oh,
The unconscious mind will respond and they go, oh, well, I've been busy. I said, oh, so you've been doing a lot, but how are you feeling?
yeah.
I'm not interested in what they're doing. I'm interested in how they're feeling. Because I know this, if their why is strong enough, their purpose is strong enough, their being is strong enough, their state management is strong enough, they're going to elect to engage in a whole different series of hows and what they're doing.
Correct. Correct. Then language is how we say things, what meanings we ascribe to them. Extremely important.
Huge.
But one of the things I like to point out to people is that the meanings that you might be ascribing to something may not be the same meaning that your spouse is applying to it.
1,000,000%.
That's a good place. That's not a bad thing.
No.
It's an opportunity to discuss. It's like this word communication. Because I mean, Chuck, every time we talk about relationships, like, oh, the key to a good relationship is communication. I was like, hold up. That's what everybody says.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because everybody says it makes it true. When you say communication, what do you mean? And sometimes you get very different answers when you start to unpack that word.
Definitely. Well, and it goes back to, so they go, it's so simple. It's that simple as just communication. And I go, what did we say? It's simple, but not always easy. And so people hear different things when different language is used.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is that there's this presupposition, right? Which is, are people listening to you?
Right.
You know,
Right.
I share, you pretend like you're listening. It's like, no, I was listening. They go, that why, what, did you not hear me? No, I heard you and I was listening. Okay. Then how did we get to this point in the conversation where it doesn't sound like you heard a word I said?
Mhm.
Really? Well, tell me what I said. So now they want evidence because the brain's like going, wait, you were listening, but you weren't? Tell me, what'd you hear? And then we'll repeat it back and go, uh-huh. So what do you think about that? And this is where it gets sideways. Instead of asking what someone thinks about that, ask them what they feel about that. So how do you feel about that? And they're gonna go, what do you mean, how do I feel? Well, you ask me what I think about that? No. Because this is going to try and sort and look for different answers.
Mhm.
There was this brilliant story, and maybe this will give an example. There was this story about James and John, and they're twin boys, and they were actually studied by a sociologist. Now, this story is about 1 minute, so I'll make it quick. Um, James and John grew up in a very abusive household and back east. Their father was a armed robber and on death row. He had actually shot someone while committing a crime. Their mom, this loving, beautiful soul, and they're fraternal. So these boys are identical twins. They're identical twins,
Mhm.
and born just minutes apart. James, the older, or John, excuse me, the older of the two, followed in the dad's footsteps and is on death row in the same facility as his father. James became a tenured professor at MIT. Two beautiful kids. His mom lives with him because he would never let her be exposed to that abuse ever again. When the sociologist asked both of them what they attribute their life conditions to and where they are today,
Mhm.
they had the exact same answer. How could I not turn out this way? Look who my father was.
Mm.
Same exact experiences, same exact energy, two vastly different interpretations and meanings that change their life trajectory. So please keep in mind for all of your viewers out there, that when they're embroiled in conversation, it may not be exactly the way that they think the other person's interpreting it.
Correct. 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 And there's
To
so
your point,
yes. And there's so much wrapped up in that. And I just wish actually one example that I remember exactly that issue of people having an agreement on a
mm,
particular statement, but having very different interpretations. It was this idea of being present,
yes,
being together. For one of the partners, that meant being physically present,
hmm,
like saying no to the time out with friends, or saying no to the after work gatherings. No, I have to go home. But what happened when he came home? TV, fiddling with the car, working on his hobbies. When she said together and present, in her mind, it was making dinner together, it was sitting at the table together, having
sure,
family time. And I want to highlight here, I am not saying that one of those is right and one of those is wrong. Huh?
no,
No. But what it needed was a conversation around what it meant to each of them, and what could they both do
hmm,
to serve the other while still maintain that sense of I'm not doing this for you.
right.
Because that's where we get into that issue of the giving for the taking, and compromise. I always say compromise should never be what am I doing for you. It's like, no, what are we doing for each other, where we both achieve something out of it.
Well, the five love languages is a really great premise to be able to find what someone's love languages are. Because if it's acts of random kindness, if it's um, words of affirmation, if it's quality time, if it's uh, gifts, and people go, "Well, you don't love me." No, like, well, what do you mean? We were spending all this time together. I go, well, that's your love language. That's your interpretation of togetherness. Mine is that I actually get like my honeydews done. There's these acts of random kindness that occur.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But it's never one. It's
No.
understanding the hierarchy of the three. Because
Mhm.
variety becomes a big part of our existence and what it takes to be able to feel like we have a connection. Without
Correct.
it, it gets stale. And I go, that's what happened in the relationship,
Exactly.
right? We grew
Exactly.
apart. And I was like going, oh, okay. Did you stop growing? Hmm. Things to
Exactly.
think about.
Things to think about. And on that note, Chuck, I realized we never spoke about what you do and where people can find you. So as we are
No, thank
wrapping
you.
up this very, very interesting conversation, please can you let our audience know a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I am a neurostrategist. I actually have a entire community called Your Best Life. And you can just check us out at yblnow.com. We are a group of entrepreneurs. We started realizing that people in business oftentimes started spending the first half of their life amassing wealth and then spending the next half of their life spending all their wealth to try and get happiness and build memories. And it was like, okay, why does it have to be mutually exclusive? So we have a team of strategists, not coaches, but strategists, and that are people that live the life, walk the talk, and we literally focus on four pillars, and that's faith, family, fitness, and finance. So for us, it's about getting the best insights and distinctions to grow your business while cultivating amazing relationships, going higher in your elevation of faith, and also finding the health and vitality in yourself so that you can live the most prosperous and beautiful life.
Thank you, Chuck. So ybl.com. And I want
YBL Now. Yep.
YBL now,
YBL now.
yblnow.com. Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much. So I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Um, as always, this show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it.